Hi everybody, welcome to Season 5's Episode 30 of The Hard Truth Inside the Football Industry Podcast with me, Phil Ideson, and Darragh MacAnthony, the chairman and owner of Peterborough United. We thought we'd get together one last time, kind of an end of season. It was going to be an end of season recap, but our travels have put us towards the end of May, so we've got things that's going on looking at next year already.
May has just been mad. Like, I don't know about you, like for me, it's like, it's really funny because like me and Barry, the only ones pretty much working, and Liz at our football club, everyone else is gone. Like, they're gone. Managers on holidays, staff are gone off on holidays. They're gone. So like, and then me and Baz just joke all the time because it's the same old. As the years go by, the newer generation of people working football, they just shut their phones down. Like 10, 12 years ago, me and Barry could ring anybody at any football club and they'd be working. A technical director, of football, a manager or whatever. Now you got no fucking chance trying to get hold of managers. The only people you're talking to a lot is agents. Some clubs you find they get back to you. And it's just the weirdest month. And then for me personally, with all that, was like my daughter graduated high school, so we had a lot of events, parties. You know what I mean? I drove up to Alabama to get my son from Auburn to drive his car back to Florida. Got caught for speeding on the way back. It's just been
some of those speed traps.
Oh my God.
I had to drive one of those recently.
Oh my God. I was in the UAE basically like on business, so I got a new business there. So, and now I'm finally in the UK. The family arrived yesterday, and then we go on holiday in like 10 days time. Don't know who that is ringing me on a Saturday. We go on with probably an agent finally. We go to Dubai on the 10th for like 2 weeks, but it's constant working. And then, and by the way, that's a disservice to maybe people behind the scenes of the club, not on the football side, because they're all, still working. But I know Phil's been doing tours galore. So there's been a lot going on, and it's just been a mad month.
Do you get impatient when there's deals that you want to get done and there's no one around to take your call?
Massively, because after the horror show of underperforming last year, my impatience is even more because I want us to be good and I want us to be better and I want to solve so many problems and all those things. But you can't use impatience to end up paying bad deals or doing bad deals. Like, could I go out and sign players now? Yes. But what you're then dealing with is May's price. And here's what happens in football. I'm going to let lots of people in a secret. Players go off on holiday. So then their agents, basically, you can pretty much get a lot of them. And their agents are under no pressure because usually with an agent, their players ringing them every day.
Yeah.
Have you got me a move? Have you got me this club? Have you got me that? You got me that. So the minute the players fuck off in May, agents actually don't have that aggro from the player every day. So then you got agents who just basically like throw out cricket numbers and be stupid. We spoke about it before we came on air, where agents are like, I want, for a player that's maybe worth $2,000 a week, I want $5,000 a week. And this is even before you negotiate with the club. So it's just silly season. We call May silly season. The start of June, it's less so silly, but it's still too expensive. Players are starting to trickle back into England. As you get towards the 20th of the month, this is when most clubs are bringing all their players back in for testing, checking everything physically, where they've been gone for 8 weeks. Suddenly players who don't have a club are on their agent's case. Have you got me a move? Where am I going? Where am I showing up for pre-season? Now those agents, suddenly a little bit of sensibility comes back in and go, I can't ask for $5 a week. Now I've got to drop down to more realistic terms. So occasionally you get some clubs out there who will pay stupid money like that, and God bless them and good luck to them, and hope they don't ever run out of money. But then you're overpaying for players. So it's like a fine line. You have to be like, and same when you try and bid for players with clubs. So we put in initial calls, on our targets, and we'll be very busy this summer. Even though we've got the usual £4.5 million hole, we'll still be busy actively, like we have been the last few windows. I think somebody was sent to me the other day, outside of Birmingham, were the biggest spenders in League One on transfer fees the last 5 years. Nobody ever talks about that. My manager definitely doesn't talk about that. I'm joking. So, and that's not a dig, and I don't want an Alan Swan headline, but we've been like one of the biggest spenders. But ringing around like clubs, and just what you do is you put a call in and go, such and such player, would you be looking to sell them? No, part of our plans. But if we were looking to sell them, this is the price we'd take. And the price is always like,
well, everyone, as you always say, everyone's got a price.
Everyone does have a price. We've just seen that with Liverpool. We've seen that with loads of clubs. We've seen the deals done, and everyone does have a price. But sometimes the price just doesn't marry up. And I'll pay a transfer fee. We just did it. We just signed the player and paid a fee. And their price was a bit higher a few weeks ago, and then more clubs came in the last week. But we managed to and a big thanks to the agent there that was involved. One of the best agents to deal with, an ex-player of mine actually, and his agency. Danny Blanchett many years ago played for me. He's now one of the top agencies he works for. They represent now Ronnie Edwards, other players. And, you know, and I've worked with a few good agents over the years, and they're very, very good. And you know, it's just that point of view where as much as you want, my manager's on holiday, he's back on Monday, and I'd love to be able to give him good news. There's 8 new players signed. Yeah. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, because we also have the dreaded wage cap and the salary cap. And obviously, we got fucked. You know, Sunderland magically fucked us by beating Coventry and beating Sheffield United. What would the statistical odds be if I said to you at the start of the playoffs, Sunderland are going to beat Coventry, and then they're going to beat Sheffield United, and they're going to do it by scoring last-minute goals in each game? Yeah. What would the probability statistics-wise be on that event in 2 playoff games? Probably 1 million to 1.
You'd make a lot of money on that bet.
Right, but as the football gods have punished us this season for so many things, we got punished again. So everyone knows we had 7 figures in each player. And congrats to Sunderland. They've had years of like shit, so they deserve the promotion, but they fucked us for that. Anyway.
Well, I feel that one was my fault, because I got ahead of the game.
I could have killed you. When Harrison Burrow scored that second goal, you texted me straight away with a load of money signs, and I knew VAR was coming up.
Yeah.
And I was like, I hated you for like 5 minutes. Don't ever text me in game, even like a game nothing to do with Peterborough.
I wanted to go and hide in the hole after that.
Yeah. There was somebody knocking on your door. I'd sent around. But anyway, you're forgiven. But no, listen, fair play. Sunderland went up, but you know, and it's not that we needed the money. Of course, we needed the money. Yeah. But our salary cap, obviously, we have lots of players leaving, as we know. Hector gone to Watford, Kwame will leave, Ricky will leave, all these players. But they're still on our wage cap until the end of June, start of July. So we're stacked. So
there's no kind of discompensation of that. They're not gonna run the numbers in June. They're gonna run the numbers in July.
Hector signed for Watford, but right now he doesn't start with Watford in July.
Yeah.
So his hefty wages are on us in June. Yeah. You know, that promotion thing would have opened it up a bit. Yeah. Not just, you know, having the money, not having the money. It would have given us the flexibility. Yeah, flexibility with our pay matrix to be able to sign players. Because believe it or not, you know, we run tight to the cap. You know, it's not that we don't pay players well. So you know, I want to do deals. I'm actively trying to do deals both ways, and it's just that frustration. But that will ease up. And we have targets. And you know, my manager's away, and I said to him, let's not talk for like 10, 11, 12 days. Just go on holiday, and he's done that. And you know, I'll speak to him next week. So. You know, and of course, you go towards certain targets. Now they're not affordable, or that doesn't make sense. Or you know, when I say not affordable, we could do it, but it would blow up our dressing room from a wage perspective, and I can't do that. You know what I mean? So, you know, there are all those things that come into it. You know, so me, my scouts, Barry, Liz, we've been working really hard. My 2 young scouts, those 4 kids, night and day, on to them about that player, this player, data reports, video reports, you know, metrics, the whole thing. Like we've been full on. Usually those 2 guys kind of finish up in May and take a break because we've done a lot of work going into the summer. So we're all over it. You know, we know we have positions to fill. You know, I said it the other day when we signed Lisby, you know, 1 down, 7, 8 to go for the manager. You know, we've got players to leave. It's exciting. It's tiring. It's exhilarating. It can be deflating. All those things that go into an end of season. And then your fans will be seeing other clubs making moves or making signings. I never worry about that because we have our way of doing things. I'm very confident by the time I think we report back on the 18th, 19th for weigh-ins. We go to St. George's on the 30th. I'm confident, like I said before, we'll have 4 or 5 new faces going to St. George's. And then in July, we'll probably have another 3 or 4 throughout July as things change with the cap and the movement to space, all of those things. So, yeah, you know.
A couple of follow-ups that right at the beginning you're talking about agents will come in, you know, they'll come in, let's say they'll come in at 5, and then by the end of July that number's 2 when someone's just testing.
Right. So there's a price you have on a player, and you know the player's on, I don't know, or he's free. Say it's a free and he's on nothing. So then there's your starting point. Yeah. But he ain't worth 5, you know, kind of thing. And you know, that could be a player in League 1, it could be a player in League 2. They're all worth 5, you know what I mean? And then you get what usually happens is every summer there's a new club agents will use. Oh, they're paying this and they're paying that. Like 2 years ago, it was Ipswich. Every time you rang up about a player, Ipswich are in for them. And I used to ring Mark Ashton and go, you're not in for that player. He goes, no, they're just using our name. You know what I mean? This summer, you know, a lot of agents are using MK Dons. Yeah. Because they got Paul Warren and they paid big money. And then they've signed Mendes Lang and they're paying Mendes 10 grand a week. They haven't paid him that much money. because MK Dons have a salary cap which is 55 as opposed to our 60 in League Two.
Mm-hmm.
So if you keep signing players, and I try to explain this to a dumb agent, but I'm not dumb. I'm not in for a player that MK Dons are in for. I'm just saying agents are using.
They use
you
clubs too. They
they're like, well, MK Dons, they're paying that,
money.
So if you're going to try and take our player, really, and all these stupid figures. One agent even said, poor Bradford are offering 4s and 5s, and I'm like, with all due respect, those clubs are well run, and they're not offering that kind of money. We've done business with them loads of time, and they've tried to loan players off us, and they don't even pay £2 a week. Now all of a sudden they've come up from League Two and they're paying for it. They're really well run clubs. They're not going to suddenly start kamikazing it in the market. So again, know your audience. I know clubs, just like I know MK Dons are not offering £10 a week to players, because they have to build a squad to get promotion from League Two with a wage cap of 55%. It's physically fucking. Even though they've got a wealthy owner who could do it if he wanted to,
you can't make
doing that. They're not doing that, So it's these stupid conversations, and you sit there like 5 and whatever, and I could easily pay that once my cap allows it. But players, they're not worth that.
Yeah,
and you're not going to bring a player in who's not worth it, who has to prove themselves into your squad on more money than the majority of young players in the dressing room. So do you get what I mean? It's one of them.
Do you think that Wrexham and Birmingham going up will deflate the market now, because there isn't, people throwing around, well, Wrexham are paying X and Birmingham are paying Y this summer?
But you'll always get the agents will still use, Cardiff have come down, and Plymouth are another one that's like, even though they lost their manager, they're out there trying to sign everyone according to agents. And whilst Plymouth might pay more than us, of course they do, because they've got bigger gates that just come down from the champ. It's not miles more than us. And I get it. People will favour Plymouth because they've come down and they're a biggish club and blah 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 blah. But I get it. But they've done well in the champ. They've come down. We've always done well in League One. You know what I mean? So I'd always put ourselves. We would have a chance. Now, if they want to pay double what we're paying for a player, that's on them. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to and I'm not saying they are, but obviously agents will use that as a stick and whatever. And by the way, shout out to the Plymouth owner. I saw he made a statement today to the lost their manager. And he's a good guy, Simon. His communication is very good with the fans, and I like, the cut of his jib and the way he operates. So it's just one of them things that agents will always dive in things. They used to do it with Huddersfield. Now things have gone quiet on that front because, Huddersfield has hired a new manager, and I don't think they're going to get silly with the money they spent. They did a few big deals last year, and I think the owner got fed up with it and probably went, well, let's just calm down. You're always fighting with that. So it's always like Jim Rodwell from Charlton. Who I congratulated Jim, by the way, on their promotion. Jim used to work for me. He was on the Baz yesterday and said, Jesus, Baz, like, we're trying to do this in the champ. Some of the numbers, they're cricket numbers. Welcome to the championship.
Yeah.
Some of the numbers, never mind League One. So while at Charlton, paying 4, 5, 6s in League One, which is easy for them, the club their size, they're probably getting quoted 15 and 20 grand a week in the championship. And they're just like, woo. That's the shock you get. You go up the league, and then you got Wrexham out there who can afford that, and you're reading the papers and they're offering 40s and 50s a week and whatever. Well, good luck to them. There's no jealousy or envy for me. That's just football. For my whole life being in this game, we've always been up against bigger clubs. We've always been up against clubs who pay more than us. That's not who we are. We have a way of doing it. We're not going to change. So is it getting tougher? Of course. Doesn't mean we have to be a little bit more clever and box clever and not be able to sign as many players from above and maybe in League One. That's just the way it is. So we just have to go on better coaching, better analysis, better recruitment. So it is what it is.
How much do the players push the wages, or are they just leaving it all to the, does the agent say, I can get you 3 or whatever, and the agent's out there trying to get them 5? Is the player saying, I'm not going to move unless I get 4, let's say, or is he really just leaving it up to the agent to get?
No, some players can be stubbornly stupid and they hurt themselves. Some players are like, leave it, just frustratingly leave it to the agent, which is even worse. We've had players who we've had with us, we want to keep, whatever. And again, they're like, just speak to my agent. Sometimes you're like, well, no, actually, I want to sign you, not your agent. And I want you to tell your agent to see sense, because we're not going to budge. Like, we've told you what we're going to pay. You keep going away and you're trying to, if you want to get better, just tell us you don't want to come. One thing I don't want to do is like try and get players here to come who don't want to be here. And it really is about the number. Like,
it's a waste of everyone's time as well, isn't it?
It is. And we have a project, and there's a couple of players that left, and maybe the manager wants to get on. And I'm not going to drag it out all summer. Like, and we've told them as well. Like, the next 10 days, 2 weeks is our line in the sand. We're moving on. Like, we've given you our best offer. We're paying you more than you're already on. That's it. We're not paying more than that. So if you want to go to a club who might pay you a few £100 more a week, but aren't the ilk of our club and what we do for players and everything else. Well, tough. Like, we don't have to audition to sign players based on what we do. I was speaking to a top French agent the last few days because I'm looking at signing one of his players. Now, he's not French, and he's a really, really good agent. He's the agent of Torres. He's the agent of players at Liverpool. He's the agent of. He's at the PSG final tonight, and I was even embarrassed saying, why am I dealing with you? And I've got one of your assistants, because you've got some big players. He's no. I have young players. We have a project. So, and he gets it. We were talking about, his player had a choice to go to a bigger club in the champ where he'd be a squad player and on the bench earn double the amount. But he rattled off to me on the phone what we've done with players. Haku, Ivan, Samish, all the players we've done. And he's like, I've sold the Peterborough project to the player and his parents. And, they could earn 4 a week here, or they could go to you 2 and earn their stripes and earn their money. And then they won't get rich at Peterborough, but they'll
then
win
they
some
go to 20 or
promotions.
40 or whatever.
Yeah, and then they'll go next. And he goes, and that was a really clever. It was a pleasure to deal with. It was great to hear. It was just common sense. I love that. Lisby, the boy we just signed, guaranteed every other club in for him would have paid him more wages. But him and his family and the agency from a while ago knew we were the best club for him, the best club for his development, the best club that would suit his career. And fair play to them. They never wavered. Like, never once did they waver. And finally, we broke through a Braintree or just, difficult at the time, to do a deal with. And, we got a deal done. And it's good for Braintree. It's good for us, and with all due respect to the clubs in from with our record and whatever else, if I were Braintree, I'd want them to come to us, even if it was 10 grand less than another club was paying. So, because you look at the Barnet relationship and what's happened for them and the business we've done. So no, and while some people will go, oh, non-league or did it, I'm sick of hearing that. We don't sign 10 non-league players every summer. What we sign is what we feel are the best from non-league. We did it with Clontarf and Nebby last year, and our fans might be willing to give up on them. That would be foolish because they're both very, very good players who are going to have big futures, and it just took a bit longer for them to settle. And we'll do it again this year. We took Lisbon. We probably take one more. There's one more I really, really like. It reminds me of a previous player in a similar position who I think, if I was to bet that he's going to come off as a really good. There's just one more. And then the rest of our players are basically League One, League Two, some from above, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't want to keep hearing about the non-league and you don't win promotions with non-league, because every time some idiot says that, I have to flash up all the players that won promotion with us in non-league. So it's kind of like that.
What's you thinking about the loan market this summer?
No. Yeah, we had a disaster with loans last year. None of our loans worked, I don't think. Who do we have on loan? We had the right back from Sheffield United. No. We had the 2 Man City boys. No. Sam Hughes, that was a good loan. Is there any other loans I've missed? They didn't work. Particularly with the younger players. It just doesn't work with us sometimes. So unless there's a position where we can loan and we have a real potential to do a deal to sign the player. Like a few years ago, we signed Schmoddocks on loan. We knew we had a chance to sign him. We signed Reece Brown on loan, a couple of times. Unless they're those kind of dead certs, in my opinion, that's the only way we'll do it. We might loan a goalie. We might loan a really talented goalie that's already been in promotion races and could be really good for us. I'm not afraid of that. There's plenty of good goalies out there, and I've said it before, that have played in both leagues, League One, League Two, in the playoffs. They've had a lot of clean sheets, really good with their feet. I'm not worried about that. My goalie coach, would probably want to sign a 38-year-old goalkeeper or whatever else. But, having looked at the goalie market, whatever else, there's some terrific young goalies that with our style of play, would just slot right in, and if we get behind them, it could be very good. So we might do that as the only loan, unless there's this special player outside in other positions that we need on loan and we think we've got a chance to get them. So I'm really happy about the Lisby signing. We've watched him since he went to Braintree. People have to remember Braintree struggled all year. He ended up with like 13 goals in 40 odd games with a team that was struggling. I think he kept them up. And, it's really funny. I'd sent Barry to watch him a few months ago because my scouts and me were nailed on him. And we were like, Baz, we want your final look on him. So we sent Baz to watch a game that was on a plastic pitch. So the player had a terrible game. The game was pretty much called off. Someone had a heart attack. The guy Barry brought with him was a doctor, who's a friend of ours at the club,
Yeah.
actually pitched in and helped the person who was ill. Baz travelled hours and hours, and then he was delayed by, the game was delayed by an hour. He rang me and he was like, "It's the worst game I've ever seen. I can't comment on the player because it was on a plastic pitch,
Yeah.
and it wasn't that type of game." But fortunately, they were playing Barnet. So Baz and his son watched the Barnet game, spoke to the Barnet people. We always speak to people like Aaron McLean, who's always watching non-league.
Yeah.
And Barnet's the best team in non-league they were. And he was tremendous against them. Do you know what I mean? Again, we'd already knew that from previous games. We feel, and I'm not putting so much pressure on him, good competition for Ibby on the left, but we also feel he could play up front. He's quick, he's strong, he's got a great left and right foot. Needs to improve in the assist column, because if you look at it really everywhere he's been a prolific goal scorer. He's an unbelievable finisher. It's probably better than the group we already have finishing wise. So we just need to hone his skills now to create more goals and work hard for his full back behind him, or if he plays up front, to press more. So there are lots of little aspects we're going to improve. He's technically good enough. You know, will he break through this year? I'm confident he will, but it's not essential he does.
Yeah.
So you know,
another one of the long. You know,
100%.
you're not buying him. You know, to be your target man next season.
No. He's on a 4-year deal. He's not been bought to be nailed on for the first 11. Yeah. But if he goes through pre-season and he's good enough, then he'll get a chance to be in the first 11. Equally, same, we signed Ephraim Mason-Clark. He wasn't signed straight away to go in. Poku wasn't signed to go in, but they impressed upon us they were good enough to go in. So it's one of them. So I don't want to put stupid expectations on the kids, because, you know, he comes from a family. His father was a very, very good footballer, played for a lot of big clubs, you know, and I think he's got a great background around him. So lovely young man. And we're really excited about him. And again, a good character, something we have to get right this year. And we need some good characters in the dressing room. So yeah, it's one of many. There'll be a few more to go.
We had a question from Danny that, as you were talking about your scouts and how hard they're working and all the kind of hours that everybody's putting in, Danny asked if there's a place for AI in football, especially in recruitment. Yeah. So the ability to scour the net to gather, you know, essentially infinite data on players without necessarily expense. Like, what's your view on that?
Everyone can ask the same question. They can go into an AI, whether it's GPT chat, one of the Chinese AIs, like Grok, you know, on Twitter, and they can put in, you know, give me 5 signings perfect for Peterborough, or 5 perfect signings for Shrewsbury. So everyone's going to get the same answers. I've always been ahead of the curve on tech, because we've used data since I bought the club 20 years ago when it didn't exist. So we went on average ages, we went clicks run per game, all of that, you know, and then it became available. I'm not against it, and I'm sure everyone will use AI, and it might come in handy for, I don't know, game clips and different things and whatever. I'm not sure I want to recruit all our players based on AI.
Yeah.
You know, so we're not there yet. And if it works, then everyone's going to try and sign the same players. And I like
what's your competitive advantage?
I like you to wake up and go, where did they come up with that player? You know, what the hell? You know, and I like other clubs to think that. And, you know, I know Lisby would be a player everyone would go, oh, it's a typical Peterborough signing. So I like, you know, a surprise occasionally. So, you know, working on some of that, working on a couple of surprises. Yeah, I'm hell bent on making sure that we have a really good pre-season and fly into the new season. And I want everyone on their toes. That includes my management staff. I want everyone, you know, I hope they've had a good rest, because I'm going to be demanding when they get back. So, you know.
You know, is on that kind of front, are you doing things differently this summer than you did last summer?
Yeah, we're going to St. George's. You know, last summer when we went to pre-season and I was in Spain, you had, if I took you as an example, what was going on, you had new players coming in, and then you had in one corner, you had Hector who wanted to go to Watford. You had in another corner, Kwame at the time, who wanted to go to Norwich at the time. You had in another corner, Joel Randall, who was showing love towards Bolton and not wanting to be there. And then in the other corner, you had Harrison, who we knew there was a deal with Sheffield United, but their takeover hadn't happened. Then it was kind of in the, and he didn't want to get injured, and we didn't want him injured. And then you had a couple of other players, the same thing. So you had 6 players in that, you know, camp, basically, who really weren't there mentally, physically. You had new players trying to come in, watching all of this. There was a lot of uneasement. There was a lot of unsettlement. I think us and staff were together, but we knew what we were facing. It was like the unknown. We were trying to sign players, but we couldn't until we knew players were moving. It was just fucking chaotic and messy, and it didn't help. And then we'd injuries straight away. It was just a collective mess, and we don't need that. And we won't have this summer. You know what I mean? So you know, you're going to have St. George's, yes. one or two that are there might leave, but they're not going to be demanding to leave. They're not going to be like, I'm not signing a new contract. Like, I even as an exercise, and this just like players going about, I didn't offer contracts and I didn't do whatever else. I even offered contracts to players that we could never have backed up financially just to test to see, even more. Like I offered Hector more than what Watford had paid him.
Yeah.
So our fans can say, well, you didn't offer him a contract. You didn't. If I showed you the contracts I offered them, trust me, I'm pretty convinced. I know that it was more than what he's getting with Watford. So he just didn't care. So he just wanted to go to Watford.
Yeah.
And obviously, jokes on me. I should have taken the money last summer, but we'd sold players and I want to upset my manager and, he wanted to keep them, but I should have done what was right for the club.
Yeah, you didn't want too much. You already had a lot of churn. You didn't want more.
Yeah,
did you?
but you know what? It's bad business. I should have.
Yeah.
So there's all those things, and I just don't want, I just want to calm somewhere on that front, and I definitely want to get back to, in the future, just that one big sale, a golden boot winning number 9, and that really calms things down. There's always going to be players leaving. Like, I know my manager was saying in the press about, we've lost players and we've lost this and we've lost that. I mean, I saw Richie Wellens' comments after the Leyton Orient defeat, and he was talking about it, and he was like, we're going to lose 6 or 7 this summer. We finished 11th last year. We lost 6 or 7. The year before we won promotion, we lost our 5 best players. Well, I'm sorry for like the Orient manager, my manager, for managers for clubs our size. That's the life.
Yeah.
Like, that's the size of our clubs. You can't keep good players forever.
It's a blessing and a curse, isn't it, when you do well? Because if you do well, you just don't jump that final hurdle.
It is.
All the players know they're going to go somewhere.
What do you think is going to happen? A player comes to Peterborough and a massive football club comes in for them. You're not going to keep them. It's not just about the money for our club. It's about the player. You're not going to keep them. I'm sorry. That's just like, now, if you're managing a big club, you have the power to keep them. And even then, a la Trent Alexander, you can't keep them. You just,
if you want to go, you want to go.
Yeah, if the player decides, that's it, I'm going, or I want to go, or whatever. It's so it was just interesting to hear Wellens talk about it. And, Birmingham have got more money than anyone. But I'll tell you right now, if Real Madrid came in for their best player,
right,
they're going to have a problem keeping them happy, no matter what they offer. So that's just football. So I'm not going through that song and dance this summer. And whilst we have our challenges, I'm excited. I'm excited about what we can do. I'm excited it's a fresh start. And I'm excited to see my staff come back re-energized, because I need their best this season. And we need to be miles better than last year, and we need to be at it from day one. Like day one. And build this team, and through the last window and this window and what we're putting together, make those people settle in, improve those players, work really hard, be new, be different, all those things. We have to adapt every year. We can't just keep doing the same things we did a year ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago. Things change and move. That includes I have to change, managers to change, staff have to change. It's a different game. And young people now are very different to young people 10 years ago. I have to be honest, they're a lot more of a pain in the arse. You know what I mean? Like, in dealing, they are. And I include my own kids in that. My kids are 20, 19, and 16. So they're just different. I speak to the gaffer about this all the time. His kids are the same age as my kids. He's just like, they're just different. Like, dealing with these people, at that age, they have a different point of view, a different way. And that's fine. But you just have to adapt a little bit, and you have to try and get them to adapt to you a little bit.
Does some of the more, what I say experienced, but I really mean older managers struggle with that, with connecting with younger players?
I think some of them do. And the one thing Darren's been really good at is, he's been able to adapt and be flexible. And he certainly did it. Like, forget about last year. When you look at previous years where he's had Ronnie and Harrison and Efron and these younger players, and whether they're different characters to the next batch of younger players, but he has to keep moving. But the advantage for him is, and I've always said this, is he's got a young family. He's got teenagers in his house. I've got teenagers in my house. So we should be able to adapt. And I'll even throw it out, like Ian Holloway has gone to Swindon. He probably had younger players, and he adapted. And he adapted really well. Steve Bruce, he's gone to Blackpool. He's done really well. Manager, like, from the top, who's probably come in, and he's adapted really well. Then you get other older managers who go in, they can't adapt. So you have to evolve. You have to adapt. And I have to be the same as an owner. Me dealing with this player on a contract is different from when I dealt with Aaron McLean or George Boyd or Craig McCann or Lee Tomlin or player Sammy Schmodox even 5 years ago. It's different. They're different human beings, and that's frustrating at times. Because it's just a completely different way.
The old playbook doesn't necessarily work. The way it used to.
I'm sat last summer with a couple of these guys, and it's like there's nothing. There's nothing. All that player wants to say to you is fucking talk to my agent. There's nothing. There's just, they're blank. There's nothing. Whereas in the past, there'd be banter, there'd be like, backwards and forwards and oh, come on, chairman. And, I'll get my agent to do this. It's just nothing. And you're trying to drag.
Yeah.
You want to be here though, right?
Do you think they don't want conflict?
It's a
And
bit
so
of,
it's
yeah,
like
there's
this,
a little bit of that. Younger
agents
people can't deal with it.
agents are the bad cop,
Right.
and I'm just going to kind of stay out
Yeah,
of.
or they're just doing what they're told by their agent. Whereas I want them to be a man, and I want them to say, "Well,
Yeah.
actually, hang on." I remember years ago, as an example, 𝗦𝗡𝗡𝗔𝗦𝗢𝗡. It was like his third contract, and his agent was being like high maintenance. And he came to me in a hotel, and he was like, "Look, if you do this, leave it with me. I'll tell my agent to get it done." Aaron McLean and me had a fallout years ago when we got a promotion. I forget if it was a promotion, and I was trying to do a new deal. His agent at the time, I was having a nightmare with. Me and Aaron had a round. He wanted to go to Wolves. Lydia, me and Aaron got the deal done. Aaron was like 24, 25. So it can be done, and I just want some of these young players to take more responsibility for their career. And equally, I want them to be appreciative for what our club's done for them as well. Like, because there was a bit of that. Like Hector sent me a congrats, or not a congrats, a goodbye and thank you. And I love that. It was classy of him. And I just want to give a shout out to 𝗦𝗘𝗔𝗦𝗢𝗡 and many of the players who've left, and Hector and Co and Ricky and 𝗦𝗡𝗡𝗡, and wish them all the best. But I'd said to Hector last summer, look, Hector, you're our captain. I, not my manager, paid 400 grand for you as a 19, 20-year-old that nobody wanted at Leyton Orient to come to us. As regards to nobody at our club at the time, previous management, never heard of him, really didn't fancy him. Their own fans were laughing at us. I and my two scouts were the ones who picked him, who found him. We paid 400 grand. And I said, the mistake at the time, I don't say whose mistake it was not doing a 4-year deal. It was a 3. It should have been a 3+1, which we do with all young players. And I said to him, don't walk out for free. Don't do that to the club. Do a 1-year extension, so that, and I'll even agree, first time I've ever done it.
Still sell you. Sign you 1 year and I'll still sell you.
I said I'll even agree to a figure, that the club will pay now, they'll pay again in a year. And that way you win, we win, and do the right thing. But there's no, and I'm just not having to dig at him. But him and his dad and his agent were just like, there's more his dad and his agent than him. But I thought, well, give back to the club that has looked after you really well and paid for you and all those things, But no, there's no. And then someone will go, well, the other side is you'll get rid of a player and you'll do this. Yeah, but I always pay. They always earn. When you say I get rid of a player, you don't just get rid of a player; they get paid. So the same with regards. We look after a player. We hope there's a bit of loyalty there, and they do the right thing. So yeah, that's just football. So
you got players like Kwame and Ricky who've obviously are going onto new adventures. How involved from a communication perspective are you, or is the first you're going to hear about this when they sign a new deal with somebody?
So no, we've spoken with Ricky's agent. He's a good guy, Liam, and Ricky's family. Ricky, he's speaking to 3 good championship clubs at the moment. When something is agreed, we will go in and do a deal with them, unless they want to take the Russian roulette of going to a tribunal. So, and we're good to deal with and whatever, because that tribunal needs to pay everything. Whereas if we do a deal, they can pay over time, they can do different things. So we're confident he's going to a good championship club. We know Kwame's been offered an absolute blockbuster move to a top club in England. Obviously, I don't know what he's thinking or what he's waiting for. But his agent's big agent who represents Man United players, so I don't know. He'd be mad not to go to the club, as I think they'll be in the Premier League. And he'll be, their best player. And I think he'll rip it up on the champ. Now, unless suddenly a Premier League club could come in or have come in, I don't know. Obviously, if he fucks us and goes to Europe, I'd be furious, because I know that he'll earn more and he'll be in the Premier League in a year. I think a player like him disappears in Europe. If he goes to Europe, he disappears. That's his career. Whereas at his age, if he goes to where I think he should go, it's not just about us getting paid. I think, I've always said this, I plucked him at 19. Nobody wanted him. We went out and paid big money for him. He'd had a horrendous year the year before. That's why his value dropped. We went and took a chance. We developed him. If he listens to common sense, and I don't know if his agent talks common sense, because I hope it's about him, not his agent, the moves. The best club for him is the one I know is in for him, because he'll be their standout player. He'll be playing in front of 40,000 people every week. And I think he'll be in the Premier League in 12 months' time. And I think the sky's the limit for him. So I don't know what he's waiting for. And that club, we will talk to them if he does sign for them. And I think common sense will meet. So that's where we are with those two. Do you know what I mean? And we've obviously had bids for, some of our premium young players. There's been a lot of stuff in the press,
Yeah.
but we kind of, unless they're blockbuster offers, we kind of want to keep them because we think, what Donnelly, Mills, players like that will be in a year's time, really important. Obviously, we're trying with Harley to sign a new deal. His dad's not been easy on that one. We want to make him, with Rio, there's our two full backs, you know what I mean? Like, I'd love a Harrison story for Harley, to break in and be one of the players of the season. And I think he's got it in him. But, if his dad runs down his contract and whatever else, I just think it's the wrong move. We're going back to Flynn Cork days years ago, which didn't work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're trying to, Donnelly and his family saw sense last year and signed a deal and he kicked on, he had a good season. And I want Harley to do the same and settle down. And I certainly don't want our younger academy-based players trying to hold us as a club, to ransom.
Yeah.
Because I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Because we give them the platform. And we've made that clear. Forget about Harley for a minute to a lot of our younger players in the academy. If you and your families are going to play games with us, we're not playing that game.
Yeah. There's an expectation that we're investing in you all through these early years, and you're going to invest in us.
Correct. And we've been fortunate, like, Bolu and other players of that ilk, them and their families have all signed long-term deals because they believe in the project.
Yeah.
And then you get other players with families get overly involved and it becomes about money. I only want parents and family involved about careers, not money. That's what I want. Like, if you talk to me about my 19, 20-year-old son and what he's going to do in future in college and whatever else, I want to talk about his career. I want to talk about the work and is he going to enjoy it? He's going to be good at it. And the money will follow and be successful. But I'm certainly not going to be based. It's all about the money now. So, and that's how I feel about that. So I'm hoping Gary, Harley's dad and whatever else, I think he signed up with a massive big agency now, a big top agency that used to represent Gareth Bale and co and Jack Grealish. That's great and that's fine. But we want him to be the left back of now for us, not the left back of some 21 academy.
Yeah.
Even though it might benefit us by many seven figures. We want him to be a star next year in League One. So, but I don't want to overpay a 19, 20-year-old, not because I don't have the money, because I think it's fundamentally wrong that they get money too quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm always, all of my young players are on contracts where the more they play, the more they earn. The more they earn, it will carry on in their contract.
Yeah, you can't break that structure for one player, can you?
No, and I won't. Because it's right that they all earn it. Just because you've done well for a few games or you did great, you've got to earn it. Earn it. And I think fundamentally what's wrong with football is too many of these young players get paid too quickly, too early, and it ruins them. So I've been preaching that for years. So let's see.
One last question, because I forgot to ask us when we were talking about the playoffs.
Yeah, then we talk Bradford.
Yeah, do you think Harrison being not getting promoted sets him up for a move to the Premier League, or do you have any kind of expectations around that?
Look, we'd love him to get a £20 million move because look, here's the thing with Harrison. And that's an example for Harley and his dad. Harrison signed 3 contracts with us all the way through. Starting on 300 quid a week, and then when he left us, he was on. I think by the time he left us, he was up to 2.5.
Yeah,
and then he ends up on 14 when he moves, and he wins Best Player League One. He's in the Team of the Year at left back in League One. And then in his first year in the champ, he's the best player in the championship, best left back in the championship, Team of the Year, didn't get best player. And he's, 22, 23? Harrison can play in the Premier League. If I were a West Ham who's just lost Cresswell, and I know West Ham likes some good top-end championship players, and not just as we have a sell on, and if Sheffield United wanted to do business, I would be signing Harrison Burrows because he's English. He's got it's not just his defensive now that he's improved by a million miles under my manager and under Chris Wilder. He's a goal maker. If you look at the quality and everything, look at him in the playoff semi-final. He was a star man in 2. The big games he shows up. I think he had 3 assists and a goal. He's a proper player. The playoff final, he scored a perfectly good goal. VR was a lot of bullshit. It was an absolutely terrible decision. But again, look at the quality and look at what he did. So for me, any Premier League club, even, as a Liverpool fan, look, I'm telling you now, he's a proper player. If he plays for England for Sheffield United, we make another £1 million.
Yeah.
If he does that with another team, we won't. So, but I honestly think he has a chance in the future of playing international because you look at the fullbacks, left backs for England, whatever else. Just look at it. Every year is better for him. And Sheffield United fans, don't get angry with me because I'm trying to sell you one of your best players. Okay, I'm just saying that there is a market there if somebody wanted him. you know, and by the way, just so you know, the head scout at Sheffield United who recruited him sent in a must-sign report on Harley Mills
Right.
as Harrison's replacement. Funny
Yeah,
enough.
there's a pipeline going
Yeah,
on here.
as Harrison's because I got a snippet of the report and it said if Sel Burrows to the Premier League, perfect replacement. So, you know, only because they're the same player.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
create loads of goals, take all the set pieces, and attacking full back who are improving defensively. Do you know what I mean? So a wand of a left foot. And I'm not trying to sell Harley to Sheffield United
Right.
and whatever else. I'm just throwing things out there. So yeah, it's I'm very proud of seeing Harrison's journey and equally other young players of ours, you know. And I know next season Ephraim Mason Clark's going to have a hell of a season. I think Ronnie Edwards is going to be one of the best players for Southampton in the championship. Based on his loan spell.
I was so happy for him that he did so well at QPR after struggling.
Absolutely, they loved him. They loved him.
Team.
You watch him; he'll have a breakout year. And I'm told closely that Frank of Brentford, the Brentford manager, my fucking mind scrambled, Thomas Frank, said the Baz at the LMA that Benji Arthur he loves and is a Premier League player, and he will play in the Premier League, and he could have a big future. So it's going to be great seeing some of those posh youngsters, many of them homegrown. Never mind what Ricky's going to do next. And if he goes where I think he'll go, I think he'll do really well. So I'm excited to see that. So I can never be regretful or resentful because I want to see those young players do really well because it benefits us, not just financially, but for the next batch coming through and shows people how good our academy is. And our academy is one of the best out there now. And we've got some real talent like sizzling below the surfaces. So no, I'm excited. Let's get on and have a really good summer. We'll obviously speak when I go to St. George's in pre-season. Let's talk Bradford. Come on, give me the Bradford juice. Who have you signed and what are you signing?
So we've only signed one player so far. We signed Max Power,
good signing.
Who was Wigan, I think, has been around a few clubs. He ended up in Scandinavia and came back. So he was kind of the first signing. We haven't signed anybody since. I was reading this morning that they're hopeful of signing somebody else in the next couple of days. But we'll see if that goes through. I mean, as probably like your manager is with you, Graham, is definitely, I want to get everybody in as quickly as I possibly can so they're all ready to go to preseason camp together.
Yeah.
And again, you know, the realities of everything we talked about in the episode, we'll see if that really happens or not. I think we're after, I think 5 or 6. You know, I think there's a feeling that there's a spine there that if fit, is, you know, we don't need to dismantle the team to compete in League One.
Yeah. Nor should you.
But we obviously need some additions that have got the experience of the upper reaches of League One to kind of cement the squad.
Now you sound like a posh fan.
Yeah.
Do you need that?
Well, it's funny, you know, you go into a new season, League One, and your expectations are, well, I just hope we finish, you know, 5th bottom. Or
really?
above will do me.
Bradford, but club your size. Come on.
But I mean, I think because we've been so what's the word? We've just had so much of League Two. We've just still got the PTSD of let's just not go down. But I'm going to be really interested in where we go. I mean, obviously, people are making some stupid bets at the moment because I think we've been the most backed side to get promotion, and according to Odds Checker. And I think our odds are relatively short. So maybe it's those agents who are throwing around silly numbers of what they think we're going to spend on players, putting some money on us to get promoted at the same time.
Oh, fair play. Listen, fair play. There's nothing wrong with being optimistic. I don't mind optimism. I hate to hear you say 5th bottom, but I like optimism.
I know. I mean, I'm being, you know, a little bit hyperbole there. I think that we should be looking at, you know, a consolidation of mid-table. You know, we don't have the riches that teams that have come up from League Two and done really well in League One in the first season necessarily have. You know, like what Stockport have done. You know, we just don't have that money. But you know, you look at. I mean, I know that Leyton Orient spent a few pennies, but they did really well when they've come up, and they've not spent. You know,
but did they? Because what they did was, and fair play to Martin Ling and co. They recruited a lot of Fulham youngsters, ex-Premier League youngsters. They did some good loans. I'm not sure they spent, as you just said. Right. I think they just recruited really well.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is a few of them were loans. And when you sign loans, and I've always said this, that's where you're losing a good quality of your squad. Like if Kalman doesn't go there and I don't know if they have an option, So now they lose the goal scorer that won the Golden Boot pretty much.
Yeah.
He won the Golden Boot? I can't remember. No, Conway won the Golden Boot. But, you're losing basically a top goal scorer in League One because you don't own him. That's always my worry, that you get a striker, and if they don't win you promotion, you are definitely losing them. But at least if you own them and you lose them, you're getting 4 or 5 million for your troubles.
Yeah.
So, but I also know that Orient's been taken over. So they've got a few
Yeah.
quid behind them. So maybe they will spend. I know Wickham will be spending. I know there are other clubs who've come down. Plymouth, as I said to you already, are out there spending. They've signed some free transfers. So it'll be interesting. But I think you'll do well. Yeah,
I think that not being the so-called big club will probably be helpful for us as well. We're just another one of many clubs that have decent stadiums that have decent crowds, and it's not necessarily everyone coming to Valley Parade to try and upset us. So I'm hopefully that will play in our favor.
Any club with 20,000 fans every time at home, you could call a big club in League One.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm speaking up for your club more than you are. So,
I know. What was it? 6 or 7 years in League Two does this to you?
Yeah, I get it. Look, we can't let our history determine our future.
Yeah.
The fact we had a shit season last year doesn't mean I'm thinking we're gonna. I'm thinking higher than that. I'm thinking like really good season. I'm thinking success. I can't think about that. I can't think about if we go back to the Championship just we were relegated umpteen times. That again, history will repeat. If I keep thinking like that, it'll happen.
Yeah.
So I've got to think the other way. Just like you've got to think that you've got a good manager who's managed in League One before. You've got a settled squad. You're going to make some additions. You've got a good structure behind the scenes, and you should do. Yeah, you've got momentum. You should do, but momentum changes like within 2 minutes. It could be a good date and a bad date within 2 minutes. Momentum's exactly the same in football. Win games, lose games, changes. But you've got a good setup.
I think the only thing I struggle with is I don't know what the baseline is. That it's hard to judge kind of where we are versus where we need to be. And we can look and say, well, we've done well in the trophy the last couple of years in beating League One teams, but they're half the kids, half the first team. So that's where it's hard to know where to set expectations because I don't know where we are kind of competitively versus the teams.
You start from scratch and then you'll find out. And like I've always said, it takes a few months to find out. And like up until December, we weren't flying, but we were like 3 wins away from the playoffs, and then obviously injuries and other shit took over. So you never know, but you'll find out in time. My special congrats, obviously, to Charlton. Special congrats to Wimbledon. Special congrats to Sunderland. I bitterly say, and a massive congrats to my mighty Reds. And obviously, very sad scenes when you met the people injured at the rally, or not the rally. What am I talking about? Political thing. I'm like at the
trophy parade.
The trophy parade, yeah, that was lovely scenes at the start, horrible at the end. So, and then obviously tonight we got the Champions League, which I fancy PSG to win and win well. So yeah, well done to all the clubs who got what they needed to get, and commiserations.
And got a trophy.
Hey, listen, you know what? Fair play to him. He backed up the second season thing. United didn't. Arsenal didn't. And well done to Chelsea for their Conference League trophy. And also my bet last summer that they'd be Champions League this year. I was right in Talk Sport. Everyone said that they'd be a disaster, and their owners, they've ended up Champions League and getting a trophy. So, the Premier League now, Liverpool are out there doing what they don't usually do, and, bringing in some nice pieces. And I'm very excited already about next year. We can just land a number 9 now. I'll be the left back from Bournemouth. I'll be a happy boy.
Yeah, you spend some of that 10 million that they got for not having to play Trent. Not having Trent for next month.
Liverpool they're really clever, and they're clever in the reason they're spending is because they know they're going to bring in probably 200 million in sales this summer. They're going to sell a goalie for 20 million. They're probably going to sell Nunez for 60, 70 million to Saudi. They're probably going to sell a few other ancillary squad players. So them spending 100 million on the boy from Germany, 30 million on the right back from Germany. They're probably going to spend 30 on the left back from Bournemouth. They'll spend 200 and bring in 200. So everyone's like, oh my God, the spending. They're just spending ahead. And what I've noticed in a few of the deals they've done, even the fullback, they've done it in scheduled payments over multiple windows. My old way of doing transfers, where usually Liverpool have paid cash. So they're catching on and they get in ahead of everyone. If they sign, obviously the talent that's coming from Germany for 106 million, if they've got the right back, I think the left back will be done from Bournemouth. If they go and get that number 9, they're also after, and I think again, he's from Germany. I'm even going to try and pronounce his name, by the way. Whatever. It was a joke, by the way.
We'll maybe get there halfway into the next season.
Yeah. And they're going to be very strong, very strong, and very settled with a strong spine and whatever. So yeah, I'm excited as a Liverpool fan. I think everyone's talking about winning the title again. It won't be as easy as you think because the Empire will strike back in Man City. Next year.
Some bruised egos there, and some new. We need to prove everybody wrong.
Yeah. Pep Guardiola is revitalising the staff. He's revitalising the squad. That'll be a different. And Arsenal, if they finally sign a number 9, which is what they've been crying out for.
Isn't this Groundhog Day? Every summer we talk about Arsenal just need a number 9, and they still.
Thierry Henry
summed it up
perfectly in the overlap.
I heard it. Yeah, I listened to him this week.
Everything he said was bang on. Like, he was very good. Fair play to him. Like, and I'm not having a pop at Arsenal, but if you listen to that, saying Man United have been in 5 finals, like in 5 years, and what have Arsenal done? Like, he summed it up perfectly. So Arteta is going to have to. I think he's going to have to win something next year. I do. Because if I were the Arsenal owners, the money they've spent, and I spoke 3 years ago about the young squad, I was excited about what they were doing, and I said 3 years, they have to win. So it's going to be very interesting next year. And special shout out to Crystal Palace. I messaged Mark Wright and Steve Parish right after the games. They messaged me after we beat Birmingham, and I was really, really happy for those guys. Like, really, really happy. Like, to see. It's just been the season of like the outsider, like winning big trophies. Like, I saw the trophies up in the thing there. It was all the domestic trophies, and our name was up there. It's just been tremendous, like, from that point of view. So we need to three-peat next year.
We also need to be nice. I'll join you in being nice to Crystal Palace because we want them to loan us back 𝗙𝗦𝗓𝗦 next season.
I don't want to make a comment on that. I don't upset you and the Bradford fans.
I think it's a stretch for us.
Well, he's gone somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll watch. I wouldn't be surprised.
Your face, I'm joking.
I'm waiting for him to be like, you're stockpiling your fullbacks, and he's going to be.
To be fair to Brady, like, he's in with all the academy and the youth loans and stuff. So he got on to Baz as well, like, and said, look, and Steve Parish is one of the best owners out there. I've always said, any good youngsters, whatever else, to come our way. So we have to pick of the mix there. He wasn't
that good. He wasn't that good anyway.
We've already got 2 great young left backs, so we're fine. Like, Rio's back, Harley's obviously this year. We got 2 great young left backs. So
it's also really. I mean, I can't think of many examples where we have had, and I think you've had this trouble as well, where you have a loan signing who really just does so well in the first season, you bring him back, and they just don't repeat. Very rarely.
Yeah. We, obviously we had our issues with, 𝗙𝗦𝗓𝗦, great last year, disastrous this year for whatever reason, injuries and stuff. And I still think he'll have a good career. It's never really, no, you're right. Reece Brown came back twice, did okay for us. I think Sammy we had on loan, then we bought, and he was brilliant for us. But you're right, like double loans.
We had Dion Pereira.
Yeah, doesn't always work.
In non-league.
Yeah, doesn't always work. So I agree with you. So in that regard. So, but anyway, fair play to Palace. What they're doing. I messaged Steve Parish at the end of last season just to say I love watching how you play. I love how your manager has you playing. And again, they had a horrible start to the season, but they never shirked. They it's a proper, well-run club. Their biggest thing will be signing him to a new deal. So I think he's only got a year left because he's a brilliant manager, like an absolute brilliant manager. So, but again, they've got a great, academy, the things behind the scenes, and whatever else. So, no, Palace are like in a good spot. And a special mention to Brentford. Brentford have had an unbelievable season. And it's really gone under the radar because Tottenham winning the Cup and Palace winning the FA Cup.
It's funny how it's almost like expected now, isn't it?
Yeah. Did they finish 8th or 9th?
I'm just having a look at the table now. They finished 10th.
They finished 10th in the end, right? I mean, they were up in 8th place. They had a couple of, ropey results.
I mean, they were a joint 9th with Bournemouth on goal difference in the.
Bournemouth have got a lot of credit, but obviously Brentford didn't get a lot of credit. I mean, you lost like your best striker a year ago. Was banned and played and got sold. You've had a lot of change. They didn't have a great season last season, even though they stayed up. And then they've gone and finished like top 10 this season. I mean, people don't talk about, never mind Bournemouth, for a club Brentford size, because Bournemouth spent a lot of money. Yeah. So, Brentford just, it's like the untold story. It's almost expected. It's crazy.
I mean, you look at 6th through down to 10th. Villa were in the Championship not that long ago. Forest, Brighton, Bournemouth, Brentford. I mean, yeah, they spend money, but you look at the bottom. You know, as we've talked about, Spurs, Man United, West Ham. It's just been fascinating, even though it's not from a. It wasn't a close title race in the end, but it's just been very interesting to see some of these clubs consolidate, their position over the last few years in the Premier League that you wouldn't, non-traditional Premier League clubs. So it's that the potential is there. Doesn't matter where you are in the pyramid and how much the gap seems. There's always a chance.
No, there's always a chance. It's the fairy tale story. I was speaking to someone from the MLS and the USL the other day. It's the pyramid. It's the fairy tale. It's the Blackpool story. It's the Luton story. It's the Brentford story. It's you can't say the Ipswich story because they spent well, but I mean there's some there's always stories, and still again in the champ there will be again next year and the year after. What you don't want is the same 3 up and down every year, so we have to break the back of that next year. Obviously Leeds, Burnley gone up, Sunderland were the surprise, but Sheffield United should have gone up. So I fancy Coventry are my tip as a dark horse next year. I know Leicester will be up there and Southampton. I really fancy Coventry, so that'll be an interesting one for me to see. Lampard season 2, full pre-season, and if they can, because they should have beaten Sunderland. So I really fancy them strong next year for some reason. So let's see if I pick that one right.
What do you make of Will Still going to Southampton?
Yeah, good coach, interesting. Obviously, he's been called out the Championship manager, the football game manager. He was an analyst. He's done well in front. Done well. He didn't do brilliant. Did well. I think he'll suit Southampton. I think he'll suit what they want to do. I think if Leicester let go of their coach and they end up with Russell Martin, I think that would be one of the most interesting ones. Norwich is really interesting. I think they paid 800 grand to get the manager out of Bristol. I think that's happening or has happened. So they're ambitious. I knew they were ambitious because when they were trying to buy, they did a deal to buy Fernandes, obviously in January. So I think the Championship's going to be really interesting, and let's see.
Yeah, there's lots of managers churning at the moment. Did you ever sack a manager at the end of the season?
I think I'd sack them 2 or 3 games to go on purpose. Yeah. So I wanted them gone, and just I'd put McCann in charge twice.
It seems like you're losing some ground if you're sacking them after the season has ended.
Yeah. I think if you do it too late. I don't know why. Maybe Leicester are keeping them. I don't know what the weight is. Like I just said to you there, everyone's back in 25 days. So the EFL starts on the 2nd of August. So we're kind of 60 days out. So again, football doesn't stand still. So if you're going to fire a manager, and you're going to fire them, maybe do it with a couple of games to go. Because what's the point in them sitting down with players to talk about next season?
Yeah.
At the end of every season, you'd rather it be a youth coach in charge. Say, look, there's a new manager coming in. The president or the chairman's going to talk to you, but to have a manager do it and then he's gone makes no sense. Equally, I feel for Plymouth, who their manager was involved in all the recruitment and told him he was staying, and then he pulls the rug out a week. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So that's what I know. They got compensated, but they'd rather not have the money. They'd rather have the manager.
Churn and Ruben Sellis getting sacked at Hull.
Crazy, crazy, and I don't know, who am I to judge? I'm not going to judge any owner because I don't think it's fair. But he's a quality manager, so that surprised me. I'm amazed. Go to some of the other clubs that were out there with jobs available. So it's going to be an interesting summer.
Yeah, well, let's just close on a couple of questions that I didn't ask throughout the conversation. So we have a question from Peter saying that Posh suffered a spate of soft tissue issues this season, especially hamstring issues. What's kind of the approach on trying to, he talked about, we had some staff meetings, and kind of what was the sports science team's take?
So they were really good. They were really good.
They
were really good. The actual statistics weren't as bad as we thought. Our player availability, although last year was 94%, the season just finished. I thought it would be in the 70s. It was actually in the 80s. So whilst we had a blow with so many key players getting those injuries, it wasn't as bad as we thought. What we also
wrong players at the wrong time, more like.
Yeah. What we've also seen is there's actually a bit of a running thing with players with hamstring injuries going on throughout the league. So we're looking at our training, we're looking at gym work, we're looking at what our players doing outside the club. I think sometimes it's just there's a coincidence. It's not like we're doing something wrong. We had 94% the year before this season, and we the same training schedule, the same sessions, the same whatever this season. So maybe the players weren't built up enough in pre. I don't know. Look, my sports
Yeah.
science stuff, they're very good. Now, if we have another season with the same issues, then in my mind they won't be very good, and there will be problems and there will be issues. Do you know what I mean? So, and I'll be a lot less patient than I was last year. But I touch wood, don't foresee that happening. And the biggest blow would be it happened to Hector and Kwame with hamstrings. If it happened to a couple of 21 players or a couple of
Yeah.
players who were in and out of the squad, to lose
Yeah.
two of your strongest,
Yeah.
your two best players, basically. One of them is out. Hector was never the same. He was in and out all season. And, when you don't have a great start to the season on injury wise, you're then catching up. So it was never his best season. But I think against Wigan, he ripped his hamstring. And then Kwame against Burton at Christmas, he was there for 3 months. So that definitely, I'm not going to say cratered our season, but it didn't help. A lot of things then, lead to trying to sign players and maybe bad decisions.
It's hard to replace those people.
It's just crazy, and throwing Keane in maybe too quickly, even though he's developed nicely. But all those things that happened, I don't foresee that happening. Look, if it happened, I'd be devastated. I'd crawl under a desk and maybe go, the football gods don't want me in football. So I trust Lewis, chats, the people who do the work, the stuff they show me, the reports. I trust them immensely. So, I'm hoping, are we going to have injuries like everyone else? Yes. Hopefully not to the extremeness of losing Rio for a year, losing Kwame for like fucking, a third of the season, losing Hector for nearly half the season. It can't be like that. So I'm like, we need what we had 2 years ago. You need luck. So, yourself.
All right, last question from Stephen, who's a Bradford fan. He says, I'm just wondering what promotion would do for the value of our club and how different revenue increases might look. Although I appreciate player wages will possibly be substantially higher, would Stefan be in a stronger position if he wanted to sell the club?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, Bradford in the Championship's worth north of 20, and more, and up and up and up and up and up, depending on if you have assets in your squad.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So, it's definitely already worth a hell of a lot more than it was in League Two. So it's worth a lot of money. The problem is staying in the Championship.
Yeah.
So that's where you can hang, a noose around your neck with contracts and players. And if it doesn't happen and work, you're coming down. And then all of a sudden you're just you're juggling shit everywhere. So it's a
how
fine line.
much? And then I'll leave it after this follow up. But Stefan will be putting his own money in to be able to fund increase.
He won't need to in the champ. He won't need to in the champ. The
but
champ's
he will
not
in
that
League
much
One.
different. League One, he'll have to. Yeah, absolutely. Like to me this year, like I said to you,
and I know you put money in all the time.
Sure.
To Posh.
Yep.
Does that change how you view your valuation of the club? How much money you've put into it?
No, because I think the average club, when I was going through this with some people who did want to invest in Posh and whatever else, and I was going through this with them, the average football club in League One loses, I think, 5 million a year. We, over the 19 years, we might lose it, but we've never needed owner to put in that much because of how I do transfer business.
Yeah.
So, this season I've put small amounts of money in. I haven't had to put lots in.
It's mostly cash flow,
Cash flow, like, yeah. So for example, like the end of May is a shit cash flow time. There's no games in May, there's no whatever. I had to put 330 grand in. I'll get it back in a couple of months or whatever else. I had to, we bought the Braintree boy. I had to put the down payment in, an emergency transfer, because the Braintree owner wouldn't let us announce the signing. When you sign a player, you sign a player, and the money follows the next day, 3 days later. That's how it works in football. For whatever bizarre reason, something happened to him in football where he wouldn't let the announcement of the player until the money was in the bank. I've never in 19 years seen it. It would be like me telling Palace when they bought Dwight Gale, you can't announce it until I get all that money in. Well, the money can take 7 days to follow. We trust them. There's rules in place that you can't screw a club.
If you did that, you wouldn't be in football for very long.
It was really bizarre. Anyway, so I just arrived from the UAE in England. I got a phone call because I just put in 330. We're going into June. Wages all paid. And we've money coming in next week from commercial. We've got TV money coming in on the 12th. And So I get a phone call saying, yeah, this won't be done or announced. He wants his down payment, 50 grand down payment, whatever, with that and whatever. So I rang the club, and my CFO's on holiday. Dawn's just coming back. She was like, we've just paid all the wages. It might take 2 days before money clears, whatever. So I had to send an emergency transfer from America after getting off like a 15-hour flight of 50 grand in to send to Braintree. because they wouldn't wait 24 hours or 48 hours based on something that happened to them historically. I just hope down the line, when they get a promotion bonus that's due to be paid in August, they don't need a favour for that to be paid in June.
Yeah.
Silly. Like, I don't get it. But look, everyone runs their clubs differently.
Yeah.
I run my club based on, history, trust, everything else. Maybe in time the Braintree guy learned to trust us, that we're better than most clubs they've dealt with.
Something has obviously happened.
Yeah, they've obviously got like they've been left with a bad bout or something from
Yeah.
somebody. You know what I mean? I'm not sure it was a league club that they did that happened to them. It might have been a non-league club, but we have rules in place. The EFL wouldn't allow us to do that.
Yeah.
So the player, we would pay, but I would pay. We've always paid our debts in football. 19 years I've got as history. There ain't one club out there that could say that they weren't paid. You know what I mean? So, but I get it. I'm just, again, if he's listening, don't get all upset, because I'm just telling the truth. At the end of the day, I'm trying to explain what it's like running a football club sometimes with cash flow. But yes, I put in money and I take out money. But usually we sell enough players every year for the club to wipe its face. If we don't, I'm making up the difference. And that's the advantage of buying into Peterborough than another club, because most owners who come in have to buy a new squad, and then they have to keep putting millions every year. When they come into our wonderful club, they've got a squad worth millions, and they've got a system that operates where they actually don't have to put a lot of money in every year. Therein lies how we operate.
Your academy flywheel.
Everything. Exactly.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up for the season. Cool. Thank you, as always, for just being
everybody. The grand finale.
The
grand finale. It's wrapped up. It's done. What are we? Season 6 next year, is it?
Season 6 next year. We got our 30 episodes in this year again, which is always, in fact, I think a couple more than we've got the last couple of years.
Okay,
so
cool,
we do our best. Travel aside.
Season 6 will be back end of the month, pre-season.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening and sticking with us as well. Have a good summer, and we'll be back soon.
You too.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care, guys.